They say that your paper, your way. It means that you are free to present your research as you want. As just I mentioned, you can't omit research methodology section, but you can present it the way you want in your research. In results also, you can present your results in a section called results. You can present your results together with discussion, results and discussion, or any other way that you would prefer to do that. Now, what are the differences between reporting qualitative and quantitative findings? I believe that you are familiar with qualitative and quantitative techniques, and you also know that we may have a mixed method, which involves qualitative and quantitative techniques together. We have already discussed in our research methodology class. Just to tell you a brief, qualitative techniques, including interview, focus group, observation, those data that are not numerical. In quantitative techniques, we deal with survey, driving predictive equations, simulations, experiments, etc. And when we talk about mixed method, it is involved with interview plus survey, or survey and interview, or interview and simulation, or any other combinations of qualitative and quantitative techniques. When you Google or YouTube how to write qualitative findings, quantitative techniques, you will find lots of videos and websites giving you some tips how to write based on the method that you have chosen. Today, I'm going to share with you the way that you need to think and then write your findings. So from now, I'm not gonna talk about qualitative or quantitative, doesn't matter. Of course, when you are reporting qualitative findings, you need to write more than quantitative techniques, because when you adopt quantitative techniques, you can present your findings mostly on charts, graphs, tables, but in qualitative ones, you need to write more and explain. However, there is no difference on the way that you need to think. Let's talk about this a bit more. What should be included in results section? Look at this code. The major task of writing involves working out how to make contextually grounded theoretical points that are viewed as a contribution by the relevant professional community of readers. You know, the key word here is the contribution. You need to show that these results are unique. These results have contribution to the body of knowledge. So if you are, I don't know, any field of area, if you are working in field of, let's say, tourism, you need to show that these findings you cannot finding anywhere else. These are the findings of my research. So what you should cover in this section, the findings from the method you have applied. You know, different methods have different capabilities. So you can't use, for example, mean index to show their inner dependencies, because this method is not capable of doing that. So you need to report the findings of the method that you have used. And this is very important. The answers to the research questions. You conduct a research to answer your research questions based on and using the methods that you have chosen. So you need to make sure that when you are reporting your results, these results are the answers of your research questions. I will talk about this a bit more later. How to present the findings in a logic sequence. You know, when you conduct a research, you definitely, especially if you want to publish them in reputable journals, you definitely have several findings to report. It is not just to report a very simple thing. This is my finding and I wanted to publish it in this journal. So you will be definitely rejected. You need to show that your findings are worth to be published in such journals. So you need to have, as I mentioned, several findings, and these findings should be reported in a logic sequence. If your research starts from, let's say you have 2 or 3 objectives or research questions, for each of them you have separate findings, and you need to present them based on the order of your research questions or research objectives without interpretation. When you write about your findings, you just say that we found this based on our findings. This is, we found that, blah, blah, blah. So you are not going to discuss it. The discussing part is related to the discussion section. If you present your findings together with the discussion, you're free to do that. But if you have 2 different sections, for result and discussion, you just report your findings. Probably if you have 2 different sections for the findings and for the discussion, the findings part would not be that long. Just let's say a couple of paragraphs only, together with some probable tables, figures, and so on. And use diagrams, figures, and tables. It is very important. If you can, if the data can be presented in these forms, it is better to present them in a figure, in a table, in diagrams, and you can present as much as possible, as much the important, actually, the data that is worth to be presented. You can use all the data in one figure or in one table, and then explain that this table shows the first column shows this, the other column shows that. So this is the way you need to present the findings. And now we're going to talk about the steps you need to take to write your research findings. This is a practical way. Write down what you know based on the findings from the analysis of your data. The things that you did not know before conducting your research. It means that you should forget about the literature review in your area. Don't think about what others have done. You just go and see what are the findings, what you get from your own study. This is just a couple of examples. The criteria are refined by the experts' opinions, and the final list is provided, for example, in table 1. So this is related to your research. You have refined the criteria. The best and worst aspects are determined. Let's say that you are working on the sustainability aspects and you found the best and worst, for example, in your research scope. The average weights of the criteria are calculated, as can be seen, or you can report the values here. The highest weight is related to the economic aspect, and the environmental and social aspects are the second and third most important aspects. You have conducted a research. After that, based on your analysis, you found this. This might be in line with what others have done, or there might be some inconsistency between your findings and others. Then you need to discuss it in the discussion section. The economic aspect is the most important one, and the criteria cost and quality are the most important criteria. So these are again the findings of your research. There are many other things that you can report. For example, you can report the R-square values. You can report the consistency ratios. These are based on the method you have chosen. For example, for some regression techniques, for some machine learning techniques, we need to report mean square error. We need to report R-square. These are the values to show the accuracy of our model. Or you need to, for example, if you adopt some multi-criteria decision-making methods, you need to provide the consistency ratio between the findings you got. In the quantitative surveys, you need to provide the CarMax alpha to show the reliability of your data and many other things. So I just got this from, I've taken it from some articles to show you what are the results, what the results of your research should be. For example, here, although all variables are influential in the financial analysis, some are not applicable to all cases. So based on your study, you found this and you couldn't find it anywhere else in the literature. Or this one. So these are just some examples. So the first thing you need to look into your analysis, just write some sentences for you, the different aspects of findings that you got from the analysis. Just write down for yourself. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5, based on what you have done in your research. In step 2, read some similar published articles carefully, especially those published in your targeted journals. If you want to publish your article in prestigious journals, definitely it varies from the Scopus Index journals. So for every part of the research, I strongly recommend you to read at least a couple of papers published recently in that journal to get an idea what are the expectations of that journal. Now, I'm giving you two examples here. Let's say that we want to use a method called DMATL. DMATL is a method that investigates the inner relationships between the factors. I did the analysis and now I want to know what I should report because I got many data. When I see one of the articles published in my targeted journal, I see that 5 tables, as you can see, are presented as the result of this method. So they had some variables, and as you can see, we have table 4 until table 8 to show their findings based on the data we have, based on the meta analysis we conducted. 5 tables have been reported. And when I look into this, I can't easily understand the inner dependencies because, as I just mentioned, the method is to help us to find the inner dependencies. When I go further in the results, I see that a figure is also presented. In this paper, it discussed that those factors come on the top side are those influential, those coming below are those who are receiving the influence. So from this diagram, I can understand that, okay, around 4 of these uh, variables or factors are the influential factors. So I just get an idea if I'm using the metal, what I should report. Then I go to find what other researchers done, those who use the metal technique. I see that in another article, you can see in this one, 5 tables are presented. However, in another article, I see that only 1 table is presented, and this is the last table of here, the table 8 only presented, because the authors mentioned that there is no need to present the previous data, and we just present the latest findings. This is completely up to you. You know, maybe in this study, this research has lots of tables, so authors prefer to avoid having too many tables in their article, so they just present the last table of the findings. In the previous research, let's say that these are the only tables they have, so the authors think that if we present only the last table, the length of our paper would be very short, so we prefer to present all these findings. It is completely up to you. And when I see the graph, I see that, okay, this graph is more comprehensive and easier to understand compared to this one. When you read some more others, use this technique, you can get the idea how you can present your result. This is, up to you. You want to present it as a graph, as a table, you want to write, but you need to find the one that suits your research and you would like it more. So when you see these articles, it helps you to understand and to give you some ideas how you should present. This is another example of barrier identification. So in the left side, you see that this is a model based on best-worst model. In the right side, you can see a hierarchical model. When we see this, we get the idea, okay, if I'm doing some identification based on a method, it's a good idea to present the model of my work. So maybe it's similar to the right one, to the left one, or another thing, but you at least you just get this idea that a model would be beneficial to be included in my finding part. So these are the benefits of reading similar articles before start writing this part. You get general idea about what and how to present your findings. You will not miss presenting some important parts of the findings. Sometimes it happens that we see that some informations are missing. So the others forgot to report them because maybe they found that it's very obvious, so they didn't report it. When you read, everyone is reporting this data, so you get the idea that, oh, I should also report this. You get the idea about the importance of finding elements. If you see that an author showing some part of the data and discuss it a lot, so you get this idea, I also can do that. Why wouldn't I? If I have such data, and sometimes you see that, oh no, I think it's useless, no need to do that. It is up to you. So please try to read as much as you can before start writing. It helps you to figure out any possible mistakes you may have made in the analysis. Sometimes when you get your findings, let's say that your findings, all of them are with some decimals, let's say 1.23, 3.25. And when you go and see other researchers who have used the same method and their findings are 2000 plus, for example, you get that maybe I've done something wrong here. You can go and double check if you have conducted the analysis correctly. It's very beneficial when you want to discuss your findings. As I just mentioned, when you want to discuss your findings, the more data you have presented, the more discussion you can make on the findings. If you don't present your findings, you won't be able to discuss them. Step 3. Refer to research questions, objectives, and ensure that the results are in line with them. There is a part of the validation of your research. This is very, very important to ensure that the findings are addressing the research questions. It is called construct validity. I'm going to show you an example. Let's say that in a research, we are going to cover these two gaps. Lack of using novel and recent techniques in prioritizing the barriers to green roof adoption, and lack of comprehensive study investigating the sufficient barriers to two different types of green roofs, IGR and EGR, in the context of Malaysia. We are going to cover these two gaps, so the results must cover these two gaps. Now, I'm going to show you the results, then we will discuss whether they are right or wrong. Look at this. In the first gap, we want to find the ranks of the barriers with higher accuracy. You know, we claim that the research in the literature have calculated these ranks with low accuracy, and we are doing it with higher accuracy. How we can show that our findings are more accurate than others? We need to do a comparative study. We need to compare our finding with others. But as the data that we have, as the context we are conducting our research on differs from the one in the literature, we can't just simply compare them. What we did here, we adopted the methodology, the methods that have been used in the literature, and compare and run this in with our data, get the result, and compare the results with the methodology that we have chosen. As you can see here, the blue color shows fuzzy best worst method, and the orange one shows mean index method. We discussed that these findings are more accurate, as you can see. That I'm not going to talk about the discussion. And the other thing is to investigate the significance of this barrier. So we need to find the weights and the ranks. Now you can see that to cover the first gap, we have one figure, and to cover the second gap, we have one table. Based on what you can see based on the information we presented in the table and figure, what do you think? Do you think these two are going to going to address these two gaps or not? Any opinion you have? As I said, the figure is supposed to address the first gap, and the table is supposed to address the second gap. If you have any opinions, if you want to share, please do so. Okay, so if there is no opinion, I'm going to explain this. The first one is correct because we are comparing that, we are discussing that our findings compared to the method that has been used in the literature, our findings is more accurate. So we can say that our findings addressing the first gap. But for the second one, as you can see in the gap, we say that we want to focus on IGR, intensive grain roof, and EGR, extensive grain roof. But when I present the weights, I don't refer to these categories here in the table that you can see. So this is where we can say that this is one part of the mistakes that may lead to the rejection of your article. If some reviewer or editor see that the findings are not related or are not fully answer your research questions or are not fully related to the research gap, they will definitely reject your paper. So please be aware that if you say that I'm focusing on these two, you need to report the findings of both, not only one. Step 4. Refer to the research flowchart and organize your finding in an easy to understand flow. Subsections are very helpful. This is a very important part. I recommend you guys to have a research flowchart for every research article that you have, similar like this. I'm not saying that you should follow this. You need to show that where you start and where you end. Then you can present your findings also based on this flowchart. It would be very easy for the reviewers and editors to see what you have done. For example, in the first step, I said determining the criteria affecting the decision making. Then I present the criteria and the decision to select or reject them as an important criteria in decision making. Then I go and say structure the decision model. When I write this, when I see some authors write this, I expect to see the model. So this would be an example of a model. Then build a database related to the capabilities of each alternative. So what can be a database here? There are some values. I'm not going to discuss this. So I presented a table, and in the caption of the table, as you can see, the average weights of the alternative as the database of the prototype DSS, decision support system. So this is the database. And then calculating and weighting of alternatives and rank the alternatives. So I go and present another table saying that, okay, we have, let's say, 5 alternatives, and these are their weights and their ranks. This is the best way you can present your findings based on your research flowchart, which has been presented in methodology section. And also, if you have multiple objectives or research questions, you can divide them in subsections. So the first section is to identifying, you present the results. The second section would be the, let's say, ranking the factors, for example, or the interdependencies between the factors, or whatever else that you have. So if you have multiple objectives, definitely try to consider presenting the findings in a sequence order and in subsections. So 5, try to find the best way to visualize your findings. It is very important. Don't go for the first option. One of the experience I have recently had, this is a part of my own research. We submitted a manuscript to a journal and the reviewers mentioned that please try to more visualize your findings, not just presenting as a table. This is based on maybe some other reviewers has some opposed opinions, but when we received this comment, we changed this table to this figure, as you can see. So the figure can give you more details and probably more interesting for the readers. Steps in writing the findings. Step 6, review the illustrations to ensure they are self-explanatory. And also there is no repetition of information in the figures and table. This is very important. When you are reporting your findings as a table or as a figure, they should give the information that the readers want. Definitely, readers should refer to the text to see what you are writing about that table, but the table or the figure should be self-explanatory. Look at this. This is also part of my own article. We submitted this. The reviewer mentioned that it's difficult for me to understand this figure. So, for example, what do you mean by base value? Although I have explained it in the text, but the reviewer expected to see everything here in this table, in this figure. So I revised this table to the one you can see in the right side. I showed the values of each of the factors I have. I explained the base values, so the figure would be self-explanatory. Step 7, draft the result section. When you did all of this, then you can start drafting your result section, organize it into subsections, as I just mentioned. Start with a sentence recapping the aim of the research. You can start the result part saying that the aim of the research was to finding blah blah. Table 2 shows that this, figure 2 shows that. So you can explain, first you can recap the aim and then explain the result. Use concise and short sentences. Don't need to write a long sentence, even it is grammatically correct. It is all recommended to have between 15 to 17 words in a sentence in a research article. Ensure all tables and figures have been cited in the text. Sometimes we present a table and we forget to explain it. It is a mistake and we need to ensure that all of them are cited. Ensure that all values related to reliability and validity of the findings have been reported. This is very important. You need to show that you have done a valid and reliable research. So you need to present those values related to reliability and validity of your research. And the last step, review the draft to ensure there is no missing or incomplete information and all illustrations are understandable. This is where you can get advice from your supervisor or from your seniors in academic writing to see if this part of your research, and not only the result, every part of the research, is understandable, or if they have any advice for you to improve your work. I tried to speak very fast to ensure that we can finish on time. And now I would like to open the session for you guys if you have any questions to ask.